Story 1. My grandma was the kindest woman on earth. She was selfless, loving, and fun. Everything you could ask for in a grandmother. During extremely hard times, I would think of her. It brought me some comfort and took me back to happier, carefree days. I miss her every day. Story 2. My mom died of cancer at 48, when I was 9 months pregnant with my only child. I think of her every day. Story 3. My wife died in 2014. She was the best thing that ever happened to me. A brilliant woman. She was well on her way to a PhD and a professorship. She was 37. Story 4. My best friend left us far too soon. She was a warm, kind, caring, joyful, beautiful, and magnetic soul. The world is truly at a loss without her. Words can't express how missed and loved she is. Story 5. My grandma passed away just 2 days ago. It was unexpected, and I was very close to her. She loved to crochet and, most importantly, plant flowers. She always helped her local community by creating beautiful gardens. She is the reason I learned so much about flowers. I remember when I was 5. She'd take me by the hand and walk with me through her flower gardens. She took each moment to teach me about the different flowers and her love for butterflies. She was a strong and determined woman who always made it known how proud she was of me. I will really miss her. It's already difficult because I keep wanting to call her and hear her voice. Story 6. I lost my dad when I was only 7, just randomly one day in a freak accident. My entire life has been filled with what-ifs to the point where I fantasize about an alternate life in a sliding doors kind of scenario where everything was better for us. My mom is a picky eater, so for the longest time I assumed I was one too, but I share my dad's adventurous palate. If he were around, I would have tried absolutely wild things by now. He was extroverted, funny, and knew how to charm people even when there were language barriers. He had a whole career based on that. We used to go everywhere in his car during weekends, and he taught me how to read a map and atlas with the little time we had, while also secretly going to McDonald's. He would buy multiple Happy Meals. I would have one, and he would have the rest so I could have access to all the toys in whatever collection was available. He was very patriotic and proud of being American, but politically he leaned to the left. He told me that all the crazy things happening right now would never occur. I find myself looking up at the ceiling these days, thinking, so, Dad, guess what you said would never happen actually happened? It's not as fun to say, I told you so, to my mom as it would have been to my dad. His anniversary is coming up next month, so I tend to get really sad around that time, even though I'm in my early 30s. That feeling of something missing, like phantom pain, never goes away. Story 7. My grandfather passed away when I was 6, but he was my favorite person. He was the only college-educated individual in my family before me, and he inspired me to pursue my academic goals. Story 8. My maternal grandmother was the coolest person. She had an amazing sense of humor and was always loving and supportive. No matter what, I still talk to her and feel her presence with me all the time. Story 9. My son Christopher was so much fun, always happy and laughing with friends. He was pure joy and very talented in baseball. He loves God. Christopher lives in heaven. I look forward to the day we will be reunited there. Story 10. My mother's life was so hard, and yet on the night before she died, she told me, if this is it, then it's been a blast. Story 11. It may sound shallow that the passing I am most sad about is a pet, but my family life was never great. There is one particular dog I had that still hurts my heart when I think about him. My little raggedy man, protector of the borders, marker of the territories, and licker of all things. I miss you, little buddy. Story 12. Definitely my grandmother. She raised me when my mother wouldn't. She kept working well past retirement age just to ensure I would be cared for, and it ended up costing her the ability to breathe. She worked in a chemical plant, and the fumes destroyed her lungs. I took care of her in her final years, watching her lung function slowly decline until her quality of life was no longer there. She lasted until I was 28. We didn't always get along, but not a day goes by that I don't wish I could talk to her one more time. Story 13. My older sister was absolutely fearless and the strongest person I have ever known. She passed away in a car accident at the age of 19. I miss her every day and often wonder where she would be in life now if she had lived. Story 14. My mom was far from perfect. She was 17 when she became pregnant with me and died at 41 when I was 22. I feel lost this last 30 years without her. She never met her grandkids. She was a warrior who always stood up for what she believed in. When I was in ninth grade, she turned state's evidence against her employer for committing Medicare fraud. In return, she was blacklisted in her field of social work. I asked her, while we were literally starving because she couldn't find a job, if she regretted doing it. She said, "What is wrong does not become right just because it makes life hard." She had no regrets. Very few people in life truly love what they believe or perish. She lived it. My sister and I had to suffer, but she taught us to always do what is right before taking the easy way. That is not something popular. She was kind of a badass. She had one client when we lived in Tennessee who kept trying to kill himself. She would swoop in and get him stable. But when we moved away, the next week he succeeded. She was broken. His death weighed heavily on her. She felt that her leaving meant she was not there to stop him. Ironically, she always told me I wore my heart on my sleeve, and when I did that, it was bound to get broken because too many people could touch it. One of my kids is the same way too. 3 generations of caretakers in the world. Is the child named after my mom. Story 15. My grandma was my buddy when I was a kid. I was a child of divorce, and she was always there for me. She took me on adventures and taught me how to drive. I was ultimately able to present her with my own grandchildren. She was the one person in my life who loved me unconditionally. My wife, even though it was my second marriage, was the one that lasted until death did us part. We had our ups and downs, as many marriages do, and the years that passed helped make the bad times fade and the fond memories come to the forefront. Her passing was a shock and something that still haunts me at times. I have a partner now, and I am grateful that she is empathetic enough to listen to the memories of my wife because it was a long and loving relationship. I miss these 2 people in my life the most, but I am thankful for the time we had together. There are times I wonder what life would be like if they were part of my life today. Grieving is a process that never really ends. Even though it may not be sadness per se, it is about remembering what those important people meant to us and wondering what could have been. Story 16. My stepmother and I did not bond significantly. She was never a mother to me, as she married my father when I was 19. She was 9 years younger than him and should not have passed away first. She died in 2023 from cancer at the age of 62. She was so healthy and loved. My father will never overcome the loss of her and being left behind. It simply should not be this way for him. He is aging faster than he should because his purpose is gone. He adored her and she adored him. He broke his hip this weekend, and I am here, but I usually live 3 hours away. All he wants is his Margaret back. Margaret, I miss how you loved and cared for him. It is incredibly unfair that you are gone and he has to live without you. You were beautiful, kind, and intelligent. I would give anything to have you back because I know he wants you here. I can care for him always, but I am not you. You were so missed. Story 17. My dad was a difficult person for most of his life. He was absent during much of my childhood and left me with a mother struggling with addiction. He was truly selfish. At some point in his late 60s, he grew up, entered therapy, and began taking medication. He came to my siblings and me with an acknowledgement and apologies, without any expectation that we would want to reconnect. A diagnosis of his mental illness sparked a humanity in him that I had never known. I started talking to him again, and we began to catch up on 40 missed years. I got to know him, and he got to know me. We realized we had a lot in common. Then, after a couple of years, he was diagnosed with heart disease, which spiraled into diabetes and later chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Then he was gone. He was a brilliant man, a master of standing in his own way. Had he been born in 1997 rather than 1957, he likely would have received an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, which might have spared him a lifetime of depression, isolation, and self-destruction. I miss him. It's hard to explain why, because our relationship was complicated. I feel that most people would be angry at a parent who abandoned them, but I'm not. I understand him as much as he understood me, and that is both a terrifying and comforting realization. Story 18. My maternal grandparents were wonderful influences in my life. My grandfather spoiled me with many little things. I loved homemade ice cream, and he did too. Often, after church on Sunday, he would tell my grandmother we needed some, and he and I would head to the ice house for large brown bags of crushed ice. He let me enjoy a glass bottle of soda and showed me how to crumble cornbread into milk. When my son was born, my grandfather instantly became his best buddy. He taught him how to play checkers and put a plastic kiddie pool in his yard. He was a truly kind man. My grandmother was always happy and full of laughter. She could cook without recipes, garden, can vegetables and fruits, and so many of my dresses. They were the best grandparents, and I strive to be half as good as they were. Story 19. My grandfather. I loved him, but in the end, he despised me. He never liked me and made it evident every time. He always criticized me for being lazy, and he was probably right. He called me talentless and denied me every opportunity he could. He was raised in communism, worked in the same factory for almost 40 years, and never left the town where he was born or drove more than 20 miles away from it in his entire life. He never even got to see the sea that Romania is connected to. The only thing I have to remember him by is this leather belt that we made together by hand from one of his cows, which he made me kill. I never spoke ill of him or made him feel foolish for any of his decisions. I don't know why he always felt the need to criticize me. I may have been arrested and kicked out of the Marine Officer Candidate School program, but I cleared my records and my name. I even became a police officer, joined the army, earned 2 degrees, and went to law school. I don't understand why he had such animosity toward me. I miss him every day, even though he probably doesn't miss me since he has been gone for 2 years. Story 20. My friend Helen and I met when I was working as a housekeeper at an assisted living facility where she was a resident. We clicked instantly. The first time I cleaned her room, she put on a Carly Simon CD and turned up the volume. She shared that when she had her own house, she always played music loudly while cleaning. One day, while chatting with another resident, she asked me what I was doing for Mother's Day. I told her I was going to have brunch with my daughters. When she asked about my mother, I replied that I didn't have one. Helen quickly said, "I'll be your mother." We kept in touch even after her family moved her out of the facility. We exchanged cards and letters and spoke on the phone once or twice a month. Even after she moved in with her daughter in Puerto Rico, we maintained contact. Her daughter invited my husband and me to vacation in Puerto Rico and stay with them for a week or two, but unfortunately, we were never able to go. About a year and a half ago, I received a call from Helen's daughter saying that she had passed away peacefully at home. About a month ago, Helen visited me in a dream. I could hear her voice clearly as she said, "Where have you been? I missed you. I miss her so much. I feel truly blessed to have met her and to have had her as part of my family." Story 21. My cat Remy was always by my side. We slept together and he accompanied me while I showered, cooked, and did laundry and dishes. No matter what I was doing, he had to be there. 13 years was not long enough. Story 22. Our IT professional, Bill. I had the pleasure of knowing Bill for less than a month in my previous job. He was a middle-aged IT expert who was brought in to assist me, a completely inexperienced college rookie who had been loaded with far too much work. Right from the start, we clicked. Both nerdy. We shared the same sense of humor. He would always say I reminded him of himself, but younger. In that short month, I ended up meeting his wife and his little child. We were very close and quickly elevated ourselves to work uncle and work niece status. He taught me so much and helped me with so much in that job in such a short time. A month later, my boss received the call that Bill had passed away in his sleep from what we think was a heart attack. He was in his early 30s. I had never lost anyone before, but I cried like a baby at his funeral. Every day, every time I solve an IT issue or talk in a cadence similar to his, I think of him. The smell of cigarette smoke and warm sweaters remind me of him as well. Certain game releases give me a sad twinge since I feel he would have loved them. You were great, Bill. Story 23. My brother Nick took his own life. He wasn't my brother by blood, but we grew up together. He was a cowboy, loved horses, and participated in rodeos as a kid. He worked at a ranch and loved music. He played the cornet in school and enjoyed Linkin Park. As he got older, he really got into the front bottoms. A nature enthusiast, he hiked a lot and liked to write and draw. As kids, I dismissed his Wattpad stories while he always read mine. I feel guilty about that and visit it occasionally because it's still up. He was the most generous person and always loved me, regardless of what I was going through. I think about him and miss him every day. Now he paints me sunsets. Story 24. My grandma or Nan was the best. She made everyone feel important. Whenever I felt anxious, she always made me feel better by saying, "You'll do fine, you always do." Every time I told her I loved her, she would reply, "Love you more." I have that phrase as a tattoo in her handwriting. I'm so sad my daughter will never get to meet her. Story 25. My dad seemed like he could do anything. In no particular order, he wrote software on DOS, set up office networks and print servers, kept up with Windows 10, and had a network-attached storage system for streaming. He was an expert at Excel and served in the Royal Air Force and the Merchant Navy as a radio officer for an airfield. He was also a private pilot and then an instructor. He rebuilt cars and motorbikes, worked on oil rigs in the North Sea and off Africa, and qualified as an independent financial advisor, electrician, and plumber. He did carpentry, fabricating, carving, drywall, and plastering, designed his own circuitry for upgrading Nerf products, renovated several houses, and built a boat about 26 to 30 feet long that slept four. He started by digging out and building a retaining wall for a dry dock, then laid concrete and stairs. He did the fiberglass work along with everything else from that point on. He built a house as a side project but did not undertake tasks like brickwork or anything involving a crane, though he was skilled with a mini dozer when working on the garden. He skied to an expert level, could sail and navigate without GPS, although he took everything anyway. The channel was pleasant on the way over but less so on the return trip. He always seemed to know everything and was nicknamed the Oracle by my stepmother's family. Being the eldest of four in Yorkshire in the 1950s, he didn't express much emotion. It was more task-oriented. He once told me he was proud of me and teared up, which was so unusual that my stepmother has been bringing it up for years. I wish he could see that things are even better now. I have his tools and various other items around the house that remind me of him all the time. Story 26. My grandma was amazing. I went there every day after school, and she made so much food, especially Italian. If it weren't for her, I would have rarely eaten, which isn't good when you're a child spending every waking hour at school, playing basketball or biking, just to avoid going home to my awful, mean, drunk, drug-addicted parents. I don't mind if they were drunk or addicted, but at least they could have been nice. She also helped me get out of that situation once and for all by talking the landlord into letting me lease a place at 17. My grandma would have a glass of wine during holiday dinners and would get tipsy, dancing around after cooking since 4 a.m. I miss her. I owe her a lot which I'll never be able to repay, but I'm sure she wouldn't mind. Story 27. My great-grandmother lived until I was 17 years old. Nobody in my life, including my wife and children, has loved me as much as that beautiful woman loved me. Story 28. My mom and my stepdad both passed away in November, and they were only 43. I am heartbroken without them. My mom lit up every room she was in. She was full of kindness and generosity. She was my best friend and also hardworking, motivated, and determined. However, she prioritized kindness above all. I am crying as I write this. I miss her so much. Story 29. My fiancé and I got engaged in secret since we are gay and come from a small town. He had the most amazing singing voice and often joked about becoming a country singer. He loved strawberry rhubarb pie and had the feistiest little red horse. They were the best roping team I have ever seen. He would tap his finger to his thigh when he was deep in thought, and honestly, he was quite eccentric. We were always getting into trouble, getting lost, and getting stuck. He made life so much fun. I lost him in a car accident. Losing such a vibrant life so suddenly was the hardest thing to cope with. There was no reason for it, no warning or purpose. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Story 30. My stepsister passed away in 2022. We grew up together. She was 5 years younger than I. I still dream that her death was a joke or that she is somehow still alive. My uncle also died unexpectedly 1 month before my stepsister. I have so much to tell them, and I really wish I could see them once because I didn't get the chance due to COVID-19. Story 31. Definitely my impressive, machete-wielding grandmother, cutting down her own bananas and chopping up any scorpions she found in her little Colombian house. A 4 feet 11 inches lady who funneled coffee into me since I was 3. A true legend. Story 32. Joe Young was the original guitarist for Anti-Scene, and he was a walking encyclopedia of every genre. He lived a couple of doors down from me and worked in a record shop before the band formed. Watching him guide customers to choices they would like was enjoyable. He was also great with me, paying attention to my preferences. Sometimes I would go into the shop and he would be excited about an album that came in, knowing I would like it. He often offered, "Take it home and listen. If you don't like it, you can choose any 2 albums in the shop." Much of the music I love the most, I would have never heard without his guidance. Joe was also the most honest person I ever knew. It just came naturally to him. He didn't see any point in lying. If it was an opinion, he would openly share his and listen to yours. Maybe you could find common ground. Maybe not. He wasn't threatened by different views and saw no point in trying to force or convince others to accept his perspective. Story 33. My brother passed away by suicide 10 years ago. He had his struggles with substance use, mental health, and trauma, but he truly brightened a room when he entered, despite his challenges. He was my first call for good or bad news, and he would always drop everything to be there for me. I miss you, brother. Life has never been the same without you. Story 34. One of our best friends was killed by her husband at 28 years old. She was the most amazing person I know, and the biggest cheerleader of my husband's and my relationship. She was the first person to tell us we were pregnant. She was the kindest, sweetest, and funniest person to everyone around her, full of love and life. She taught me so much about being an amazing mother. She died on the day my baby was supposed to be born, Cinco de Mayo. She always told me she would bring me margaritas to celebrate after I gave birth. She never got to meet my daughter. I miss her every single day. Story 35. My uncle, technically my half-uncle, was the only adult in my life who truly saw me as a person. He encouraged my goals more than anyone else and wrote me letters while I was in college and couldn't visit. He was a complicated individual, a disabled veteran dealing with significant post-traumatic stress disorder, which made him intimidating to some. As he aged, he became more reclusive but called my dad every day, always ending the conversation with, "I love you." He passed away the day before my college graduation after years of suffering. He was such a unique person that I think of him daily and wish he could call again to ask me a question. Story 36. My grandparents had a dog who was essentially the family pet. He was a very loving and well-trained golden retriever. He passed away last August from aggressive lymphoma just a few months after his 9th birthday. We miss our goober boy. Story 37. My great-aunt was my grandfather's sister. She visits me every day in the form of a cardinal. She was a wonderful woman who loved me and my brother very much. Story 38. I just lost my nephew on the 11th. He will be buried on the 16th. He was such a sweet kid, only 7 years old. I will think about him until the day I die. The fundraising effort has already gathered almost $35,000 from the community and our family. Story 39. It seems mean to say, but there aren't any humans I think about daily who have passed. However, the one creature I think about often is my soul dog, Rocky. I still cry when I think of him 6 years after his passing. It never gets easier. I have 3 dogs now, but I still think about him all the time and how much I miss him. I found his old toys while cleaning out the closet the other day and almost had a total breakdown. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.